Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month's theme has been "It's Okay to Fall." I recently read, I've mentioned the concept that I've been really thinking deeply on, and the idea is forget the favors you've given to your neighbor, but always remember the people who helped you along the way. A lot of times, they are your parents, friends, family, loved ones. Sometimes they're a teacher. Sometimes there are people at work. Sometimes they're your colleagues. Um, on the 10th of October is Mental Health Day, and their emphasis was mental health at work. I do find this a lot of times there's a lot of attachments of shame and guilt to get the help you need, or to over or burn oneself out. Um, I kind of always said if um, the idea of valuing your time, that you value your time because no one else will concept, so a lot of times we try to seek external validation, and I do feel, especially in the pressures of work and how it can be hard for those struggling today. um, I just want to give you a little context. 1992, the World Federation of Mental Health and the World Organization declared that October 10th was World Mental Health Day. Continues to be observed each year. And the overall objective of World Mental Health Day is to raise awareness of mental health issues around the world and mobilize efforts to support of mental health. I've kind of been saying this not only to myself, but to in the line of work I'm in the mental health field. Am I allowed to get better? I either say it to myself or those who I'm working with. A lot of times you can go as deep as you can, or are prepared to go. And in that regards, it can be a scary question. It could be a question of hope. It could be a question of shame. It could be a question of unworthiness. I feel the concept kind of reminds me of how humanity is messy and beautiful at the same time, and I would say we can accomplish, and we can feel accomplished at one point, and also feel completely worthless at the same time. It's not so much what people see on the outside, but how we see ourselves in the inside. This month also reminds me that I like to promote the idea. It's okay, it's okay to fall. It's you're allowed to get better, and sometimes getting better means it being a little bit harder to get there. But as I said, nothing will change if nothing changes. This is an easier concept to say, but harder to practice. Today, I'll be sharing my insight. We had a few guests this month, and I thought it was, this month is near and dear. And in essence, this is the first month I actually started bringing up these themes. And I thought not only is it, the wording, it's okay to fall, but the understanding about failure and how it reflects on us. But before we begin, I want to put a disclaimer. If you are in crisis, please seek appropriate professional help immediately. The new 988 or newish 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline is available for those in the States, but I also like to share, though, for those around the world who are listening. I've been giving new numbers from different countries. Today is Barbados. The emergency number is 911, but the suicide hotline Samaritan is 246-429-9999. And Belgium's emergency number is 112, and their hotline, suicide hotline, is 1813. I do encourage you to remind yourself, especially as we talk about, this topic, and, just reminded October 10th already has come and gone, but how we treat mental health in work. So a lot of times Um, you know, understanding that you're allowed to get better means maybe saying no to some things, maybe having conversations, and maybe making changes. Um, but I will increasingly want to share that none of this is a race. So if you're struggling, you feel like giving up, please don't. Reach out to a friend, colleague, or anyone whom you could say these three words: I need help. Albert Einstein says it this way. I mentioned this with one of the clients, not clients, but guests. Um, it says it's not that I'm so smart; it's just that I stay with problems longer. Um, I find like when I'm able to focus, but also realizing there's accountability of the time I spent on it, there can be this balancing act. But there's something wonderful that happens when you stay with the problem long enough. The problem I remember myself facing was being mentally ill, struggling to navigate through that, and seeing where my part to play was. There's a lot of dreams and thoughts and ideas of where it could be. Eventually, I had to look inward. Problem solving, like I said, is creative in nature and can be more complex due to our context. What have you seen or experienced personally that helped you or others stay resilient from giving up? I'm I think it's the little things. I mentioned this question to other guests, but I think what has helped stay resilient is it sounds simplified, but being kinder to oneself. A lot of times I just want to step back and kind of see, what is the context of the situation? If I say something of the fact that this shouldn't happen to me, well, I understand this is discomforting, and I guess also verbiage has helped me internalize the idea that I stress will come and go, and I should expect stress. There is a healthy stress out there. However, this is very uncomfortable, and so is there steps to improve this situation? I think for me, I had to find ways to cathartically decompress. I had to find ways to listen to not only those around me, but also filter it through the context that I'm going through. So, problem solving is creative. It is. I think I've been and I have been using a lot more of my creative mind, and it has been helpful. Now, I do find joy on both sides. I do find accomplishment to be very cathartic, but sometimes you are not that very accomplished, especially if you're suffering from mental illness, substance use disorder, or a dual diagnosis, or you're just struggling through grief or whatever life throws at you. It never really feels like it's going quickly. The passage of time is sometimes long and arduous. I think, and a lot of things have been written. I've mentioned this in other months, that the idea and the concept of loneliness, and I think Mark Twain says it simple but digestible. He says the worst loneliness is to not be comfortable with yourself. So I find, at least we go back to the question, what I find has helped, finding that outlet to decompress, trying to insert context, not excuses, but context, and allowing yourself to ask the question, are you allowed to get better? That means you may say no to people. You may say no to things, not overwhelming yourself. You may need to make changes. However, I also understand, I feel what has helped me is also understanding the expectation level and readjusting accordingly. And that took time, literally. And I feel the importance of creativity, at least in my context, is that you begin to piece back some of the humanity that gets taken away because of said illness. And I feel that has been one of the things that has helped me, and it has helped me working in this field. Is I don't look at the person per se what they're going through first. I look at the person first, and then everything else. Because I think we sometimes have this impulse to quickly want to fix things, and sometimes we have biases of how that may look. So I think it's helped has helped me. What I've seen others, um, quite honestly, is just um, community. That's another thing that I think has helped people, and I've seen help being part of community. More is not always more, but in the concept of mental health, maybe you don't want to add any more friends or families, but being part of something can be very important. Mental health can lead to shame, guilt, and burdensomeness, all of which, from my experience, can be its barrier. It can be one of the biggest barriers, especially if you've been through treatment for so long, and you just feel stuck. Sometimes the illness itself, or like our expectations levels, may need to be adjusted, and sometimes the loudest voice in the room is not always the best one. So take time and because at the end of the day, um, even though a lot of the families and friends may at heart really want to help you, you're going to be living with you, just like so. Um, I find it's usually more solidify the person, or including myself, being part of that process. It feels there's more ownership, and it just feels more. It may lead to a more sustainable outcome. Um, I was I was more reminded of what I couldn't do than what I could do. The barrier and belief that I was in a state of static permanence. I was the sick son. I I feel that this can be true, depending on the perspective. It is very hard out there for those who not only are experiencing, but those who are trying to care for those struggling with mental health issues. I do not um, I do not minimize the struggle. However, I do feel that this can be a barrier if not addressed. So if the person always feels that they cannot, um, then the worry is they won't. And then if you won't do anything, then in essence you won't fall, but you won't grow. You won't feel better. And I feel that's where some of the concept leading back to this month's theme. If you're not allowed, if when I say are you allowed to get better, that also means are you allowed to make mistakes? Are you allowed to readjust and reframe what may be appropriate? If you're not allowed to do that, and it's just so that others don't feel inconvenienced by your struggles, then you got there's some, for me at least, from my experience, and maybe just reframing and reevaluating, maybe bringing some of the people who are having issues. However, this all goes back to just my experience and my context. So what has helped me was to not depend on others to give me that validation. It was and understand that that doesn't mean that I'm more right. It just means that I'm not dependent on others to share or direct me. Then it helps with the self esteem, at least from my concept. And those little steps at that time didn't feel good, but eventually did help me become who I am today. Um, a lot of times, unfortunately, it was not okay to fall. And I preface this for those who are struggling with mental health in the work. It's okay to fall. Is it okay to ask for? Um, is it okay to share that you're struggling, or is it not? So And these are the kind of questions that I would love for those who are listening, those who are to ask themselves: is it okay? Is it okay to fall? Is it okay to fail? I think there's been a million quotes about the idea of you cannot grow without failing, but a lot of times those quotes are coming from people that seem or come from credentials that feel confident. So the person who's not confident looks at that quote and like, that's nice, but that's not me. So I always kind of think, and I remind myself and kind of remember this same question: am I allowed to get better? So that means I may get people that may not like it because it makes them feel uncomfortable. So those are the kind of questions and sometimes the barriers that may be preventing people to explore if something isn't working, if there's other options that may be helpful. I think the goal with mental health is not to not make certain mistakes or not to not tread water too high. It's more about adjusting and transparency and accountability. It's not that the person is no longer sick, because we know that a lot of these things are a lot more complex. Just because, so I feel the approach when it comes to our mental health isn't that I scored well on the test. It's more that, am I really doing well? Am I appearing well on the outside but not feeling well on the inside? So those are some concepts when I think it's okay to fall, allowing ourselves the ability to ask the question, am I allowed to get better? And I think those questions can lead to something that has helped accept the idea that it's okay to fall. Updates on Revive Ministry and myself. Well, for the some that know, I'm based out of Florida. We made it. I made it through the hurricane. Okay. Along with Revive Ministries podcast, it's still going. I'm still continuing to look for guests and encourage. I want to say I don't want to say as a response, but this is not I treat this podcast as not a proselytizing podcast. My faith is Christianity. However, I go about it as an outreach, true outreach. I like to build a community where I don't care what faith background or whatever, wherever you came from. The idea is I'd like this to be kind of a safe space for people to share what has helped them along the way with themes each month, but more so an idea that we can continue going deeper and asking those questions as we navigate. And a lot of times, unfortunately, there's many of us who don't feel they're in a safe space to discuss or think about these things. And even though you may feel around you that you have no one to kind of share these or have the same kind of ability to share openly, I do hope that in retrospect that this podcast is some a sort of safe haven for anyone who is, for those who want to share an inspiring story that has helped them. Not to say it will help everyone listening, but the idea is that we continue talking about those things that may be uncomfortable to talk about, because from my experience, they're not going anywhere. Trying to also incorporate some music in incorporation, because I know some people may not be so comfortable in sharing. So I haven't really figured out, but if there's any updates, I'm gonna probably share them in I haven't done it for a while, but maybe in a blog post by the end of this year of what Revive Ministries Podcast maybe requesting. I may be requesting a creative element with like Music Monday and in that regard. But beyond that, I'm excited because I feel that it's become something that's kind of enmeshed in my daily day. I really miss sometimes when I don't record, and I never feel a certain way if sometimes life events happen. But I would just want to say thank you for those who have listened all this time, and also those who are starting. And also thank you for all the guests. I cannot really do any of this without you. Moving forward, I just want to share. Going back to the top of It's Okay to Fall, there was a time, I think it was last year, when there was a book. I still sometimes use it, but I haven't used it for a while. It's untranslatable words. The word is hereth. It's a Welsh noun. It says it's a homesickness for somewhere you can't return to, nostalgia and the grief for the lost places of your past, places that never were. Sometimes we have a skewed view of what may be of the past, and that in itself, I feel when I think about It's Okay to Fall, we might want to retreat to what's familiar. And I just caution on that. I'm not saying everyone's it's good to remember, especially those who are grieving. I'm not saying not to remember those who have or no longer around. I'm more talking about the concept that things were better prior, and there may be better days that you remember, but the concept is that you're living here today. So, in the words of recovery and in the regards to improving oneself, I just try not to get in that trap, in the idea of nostalgia, as described in this word. I enjoy, and there's a lot of things that I'm very blessed, and I remember, and people who are here, people who are still here, and people who are not, that I hold near and dear to me. So, like I said, just moving forward, how we're still remembering those and celebrating those who are no longer with us. But one thing that I've spoken to people who have lost someone, especially during COVID, the hardest days are the days when things normalize. Sometimes we get stuck. We don't know what's up, what's down, when sometimes we feel urgency to get back to normal. But sometimes you're in recovery where right now you cannot leave the hospital. You cannot do the things as you did before, or you may need to make adjustments. And then we could get caught up of what we can't do, going back to the whole concept of what maybe other people have said and what I've experienced, what I couldn't do, reminded of what I couldn't do. But no, the wonderful thing about this time of year is, fall reminds us of the beauty of change. And there's always this, we may see that we can't do this, but we may find another way. And just like we are not static, ships are not really meant to stay in one place. John Shedd said, a ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. So as we recover, as we're at a dry dock and we're getting everything prepared, eventually we're gonna figure out what next looks like. There's a Chinese proverb that says, a bird does not sing because it has an answer, it sings because it has a song. I think in essence that's kind of who we are. So like sometimes we may take ourselves way too seriously, sometimes we don't take things seriously enough. I think human beings can be the most impressive and unimpressive people in the world. I just remember during COVID, just how much I miss the small talk I would have when we're just kind of unable to have those small talks, and how important community was and still is. Thinking about the concept, It's Okay to Fall is our theme this month. What the question is, what do you think is important for us to remember as we try to navigate through our failures? when I kind of rephrase the word, are you allowed to get better? Are you allowed to make mistakes? If we're really being honest, um, we may be super harsh on ourselves. There's a lot of uncertainty, maybe fear. It may be maybe your concerns may be more about how others think about you. But at the end of the day, those other people who are thinking negatively about you, or vice versa, if no decision is a decision, it can lead to um, possibly life making this decision for you. So, like in essence, if I avoid certain things and don't take care of certain things in the workplace, or just being overburdened, not sharing that I've lost a loved one, just keep working to distract myself, to keep going, never saying, because mental health is weak, but who is listening to mental health is weak, and who does it matter that mental health is weak in this concept that you're feeling? And at the end of the day, you will live with you. So if if it's more important that others see that you're stronger than how you feel, and that's where the fear, I guess, this is why this concept is it's okay to feel fall is so important to me. I feel that sometimes we avoid it. I think last a couple months ago, I had someone on who was talking about diabetes, and you know, I find it astonishing how many people avoid getting checked or screened just because of the shame it brings. I feel sometimes it's the environment and the communities who do a poor job. I'll be honest. Um, we want quick fixes, if you do this or that, but at the end of the day, it's more and more people are avoiding doctors. More and more people are not getting screened, and it's one of the leading causes of death. And it's treatable, highly treatable, which tells me a lot about what we're talking about. Is it okay to fall? Is it okay to have these things? And a lot of times they're not really based on any science. Just like I feel, if I'm diabetes, I made a mistake. Well, are you allowed to make a mistake, even if it was self-inflicted? And that's where the concept of getting help, there's a barrier, because you're stuck on the idea of whether you're allowed to get better. So I think it's important to recognize that there's part of us who want everyone, or there's so much emphasis on everyone seeing us doing well. However, it doesn't matter at the end of the day if you're not doing well, if that makes sense. So I think, I hope this month, this theme will remind us that you live with you. So wherever, whatever other people think won't really matter. You know, if people think you're doing so well and strong, but inside you're not feeling well at all, but you have to show that you never fall, that you never made a mistake, who's hurting who? That's a question I would ask myself if that was me. I've mentioned questions, are we allowed to get better? What do you hope people listening will remember when it comes to self-care moving forward? Well, the idea that it is, first, it's self. So that means that, um, it's the motivation has to come from you, and there's going to be a bit of discomfort, especially, I think it's better illustrated with physical changes. If you want to go, let's say, for a run, you want to get ready for whatever physical activity, you're going to feel some strain. But that's no different when it comes to mental or just these other concepts. So if you're one who doesn't give yourself enough time, and you're used to, and you feel comfortable with working hard, I feel like sometimes we overemphasize the idea of working hard. Well, how about working hard for yourself, in the sense that you take care of yourself? Why working hard means that I avoid everything, avoid anything that would help me, but I'm released of my accountability because I'm working hard. But sometimes the question comes, like, is where's the emphasis? Is it more about seeming like you're working hard, And even if you are, to what extent? Because what if you have a lot of medical issues that you are struggling with? What if you dive yourself into work so you don't have to deal with the interpersonal conflicts that you have, and you go home to no one, you talk to no one, but you're hardworking? To what extent? What information, what is that information important to? So again, it's I'm bringing these concepts out just to remind us that, where's the emphasis? Is the emphasis on how others see us? Is the emphasis on avoiding any failure? Is the emphasis on testing well? But like Mark Twain said, the worst loneliness is is not being comfortable with yourself. So a lot of that reminds me of not being comfortable with oneself. And my final thoughts are, again, if you are struggling and this is overwhelming, I do encourage you to seek professional help. Like I said, don't let this is not a race. So if there's something severely you're struggling, I do encourage you to find some help. I mentioned some of the suicide life hotlines, but if you go to, you feel something, you're struggling with mental health or something, see what's around, see if you could get seen. Again, 988 is the suicide lifeline for states. I encourage you to find what is your mode of connecting if you are struggling, if you feel that alone. And keep asking those questions. I find comfort that our lives are really never finished. So it allows more pliability for growth. Change can be scary. No, change can be wonderful too. Understand that stress without stress, I feel life becomes dull. There is something about us striving for something to better ourselves, and that comes with asking questions like the ones I asked. Am I allowed to get better? And again, these questions aren't easy. I'm not saying that after you ask these questions, it may get more difficult, but it may help you explore a part of yourself that you really may be struggling at. I just want to say thanks to you for listening and being part of this journey as we continue onward into 2025 and beyond that. I just remember to stay updated through Revive Ministries, various platforms. ReviveMinistriesFL.com is all linked to everything else. But I will probably try to give an update, maybe through a blog or however. I may even start thinking about doing some sort of more consistent announcements. But right now, I just, if you want to be a guest, I just encourage you to just email us at info@reviveministryfl.com. It's on our website. You just email us and let us know. I'd love to see about continuing to expand and see more guests and having some return. It's a wonderful experience, and I do appreciate, and I'm very grateful to have this. And I'm going to leave you with this last quote as we wrap up. Until you value yourself, you won't value your time. Until you value your time, you will not do anything with